Okay, everybody, so today I'm going to be it's sort of an interesting video. It's I guess a little bit of a reaction to the Noclip documentary on the Thief series. And I do have to get a pop filter for this damn thing at some point. Or fashion one. It's kind of a reaction to the Noclip documentary on the Thief series, but not so much in like, oh, well, they got this wrong and that, nothing like that. Just something interesting I noticed. And really how it pertains to Otherside Entertainment and the future of System Shock 3. And if you guys haven't checked it out, it's really great. Unfortunately, I was looking forward to this for a while. Noclip's documentaries, if you're unfamiliar with the games they're talking about, I think they go in depth enough for you to really, get some meat on some of these games that are classic or that you may love or didn't know as much about. But if you know any of the history, the development of some of the games they've covered, like I felt like their coverage of Half-Life was a little surface level and focused a little too much on the community-made content and less about the actual development cycle and history of Half-Life. But this one was pretty good. It's fairly in-depth. It was a good length. I really enjoyed watching it. Had updated interviews. Unfortunately, and I can sort of understand this as well, I've been planning, since I finished my Thief Gold playthrough, I have been working on a script for kind of a retrospective on Thief, the Dark Project and Thief Gold, and also a review of the game. And of course that retrospective is going to include, the design philosophy and some of the development history and sort of the groundbreaking achievements of Thief. And I was hoping for maybe some details I wasn't privy to in this. And that's not really the case. In fact, if you want to know even more about the development history of Thief, I think the Looking Glass podcast is a really fantastic resource. If you're interested in the studio and some of their games at all, and you're kind of a fanboy, I would absolutely recommend you check out the Looking Glass podcast. So there wasn't that much new stuff, light shed on new stuff, or things I didn't know going into it. And I think, a lot of the stories that these guys tell, like Warren Spector, I mean, think about it. If you have to go to E3 every year, every other year or whatever, and you're Warren Spector, you're invariably going to get asked about two things. One of those is Deus Ex, and the other is going to be your time at Looking Glass or possibly Thief or whatever. And you kind of just have to have a story like in the chamber, ready to go, so that you don't have to think about it. It has to be a story that's played well before. I mean, it's almost like you just got to carry a soundbite with you so that you can fill up airtime when you're asked questions like that. Because if you've watched a lot of interviews with Warren Spector, he says the same stories over and over. And I don't even think it's necessarily because they stuck with him that much, but more, like I said, because he's got to have something in his pocket. And this is something I think a lot of celebrities or anyone that's going to be interviewed in press junkets and things like that, they have to do. You just gotta Warren Spector talks about the landmine thing all the time, and I'm sure there's, I think I watched him on a different sort of format thing, like a podcast one time, and he brought up much more interesting examples of the interactivity and the sort of emergent gameplay aspects of Deus Ex in other, that were much more interesting examples, but he always brings up the climbing landmines in kind of these quick format interviews because it's something that, will satiate the interviewer, and he knows it by heart, and he can grab it like that and just have it ready to go. But, I mean, there were some more in-depth things. I didn't understand. I think one thing that really came through was the culture of Looking Glass, that a lot of these people were there. I was under the impression that they were working these hours and pulling this crunch for some of these games because they just wanted to keep their jobs. And if they didn't ship this game, they were screwed and the company might go under. But that's not, at least based on the interviews in this documentary, what they said. They said it was more because they just were that they were so in love with the work and so interested in the work that they couldn't help themselves. And if you've ever been involved in a project or, you know, anything like that, it totally makes sense. You know, there's been a number of projects I've been involved with that, you know, sometimes you can't just like, sometimes you can't even sleep. You know, I've gone to bed and my mind is just racing. So I just have to get up and start tinkering or go in and work on it or whatever. And so I totally understand that. And so it seemed like a really sort of, I don't know about a healthy culture, but at least emotionally healthy culture at Looking Glass Studios. And that was something interesting that came out of these interviews. Also interviews with Dan Thrawn. I mean, Dan Thrawn does not have a very, as far as I can tell, you know, when I've looked him up, he does not have a very prevalent online presence. If I'm not mistaken, he was responsible for a lot of the sort of cinematics in the Thief games, and those are some of my favorite cinematics. I love the artwork, I love the motion. It's just so oddball and weird, and it looks great, and I love his art style too. I thought he was largely responsible for some of the sort of look of Thief, and maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, I don't know, but I can't find a lot of his other concept art or anything, so just seeing an interview with him was amazing. And if this channel ever rises to significant prominence, I would love to conduct my own interviews with some of these people, potentially. Especially people like Dan Thrawn, just to get a little bit more inside their head, to, you know, because the art style for Thief is probably one of the things that just grabbed me by the collar and just, you know, yanked me into the game and got me interested. I was like, what the hell is this? You know, the concept of like steampunk type stuff or any kind of punk or, you know, mixing genres was just sort of foreign to me because I played Thief at a very young age. You know, I wasn't really exposed to a ton of stuff like it. So it really just struck a chord with me visually right away. And it just my, you know, sort of interest, like what the hell, why are there electric generators in this medieval setting? And why are there gas lamps? And why is there like Victorian, you know, sort of like felted wallpaper and in these like studies that look like they're out of the 1800s, but then there's the guards are wearing like chainmail and you know, jerkins and everything. Like I was like, what the hell is this? And it just, my desire, and also there was like magical stuff too. Like I used to think maybe the arrows were like grounded in some sort of realism. I'm like, how the hell do you get water inside of an arrow and not break it? And also like make sure it's watertight and weld it shut so that it's like this little glass thing so that when you shoot it at stuff, it'll break. And I was like, I can sort of believe that, but I'm like, how do, like, if you see the fire arrows in some of the cinematics, it's as if like there was some sort of combustible gas or liquid inside of the glass chamber, and then they, you know, Garrett lights it or something, and so there's like a flame inside of it and you shoot it. And then you play the games more and realize, oh, there's magic in this fantasy world as well. And you're like, okay, are the arrows magic or are they grounded in science? And I just had to... weirdly enough, when I first started playing the Thief games, I didn't care as much about the stealth aspect. I just had to know, like, what are the rules? What's going on in this world? And so I think people like Dan Thrawn had a big part in making sort of the weird amalgam of genres and visual styles and rule sets of a world like Thief. And so, you know, it was cool to see him in an interview actually talking about, you know, they didn't get into the depth of the things that I would like to talk about or were interested in, but it is cool, you know, so then they talked about a lot of these people. But let's get to the meat of what I'm not here to give you a review on a documentary that you should just watch anyways. The reason I'm having a quote-unquote reaction video to this is there are a number of people interviewed, ex-Looking Glass employees that are currently, quote-unquote, employed by Otherside Entertainment. And if you actually cross-reference a lot of these people that are being interviewed with Otherside Entertainment's LinkedIn page and other sources, yes, apparently they're still attached to the company. The company hasn't folded yet. They haven't made any sort of big, grandiose announcements about anything. And in this interview, which just launched today, they are credited as being attached to the company. And, you know, obviously Warren Spector, of course. I'm surprised they didn't get Paul Neurath in this Noclip documentary. I wonder what's going on with that. Maybe they just couldn't. Maybe he's super busy right now. Hopefully he is. And they just couldn't work it out. But they got Warren Spector, they got a number of other people, including a guy I hadn't heard of named Rick Ernst. And it's not really the person I'm concerned of. It's something interesting I noticed in the Noclip documentary, and I'll probably put some of the footage up on screen. Tim Stelmach, I believe, who was attached to Otherside for Underworld Ascendant. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the documentary, he is listed as still being attached to the company. And a number of other people. And I find it interesting that if they're getting ready to shut down Otherside, there would be no need to list their employment attachments right now. You understand what I'm saying? Like, Warren Spector would just be Warren Spector. His name, you don't need anything more than that. Rick Ernst, you could be like, instead of saying Otherside Entertainment below his name on the credit, you could just say, oh, former Looking Glass employee, or game designer, or whatever, artist. So the fact that they tied them to Otherside Entertainment, I assume with the permission of the interviewees, is sort of interesting. Another thing I found interesting is Rick Ernst's his background looks like a custom piece of artwork. And it's obviously fantasy, and it's pretty run-of-the-mill generic fantasy. It could just be stock art. It could be concept art that he just found he thought was cool, and it's his wallpaper. But if I'm not mistaken, I think he is an artist, or he's some sort of designer. And it would be a little strange for him to just have some random concept art as his sort of Zoom background or whatever. And it also kind of maybe sort of seems like maybe it's something custom from his computer, maybe something related to what he's working on. We do know that Otherside is supposedly working on a new IP, not related to any previous titles like System Shock or Underworld or anything like that. They are supposed to be working on a new IP. I wonder if this is concept, even if it's not concept art for the new IP, I wonder if this is concept art that has been bandied around in the company. Warren Spector also, I think it's funny in the Noclip documentary that he's making numerous references to the financial turmoil of Looking Glass Studios, but he's doing so from a place he seems pretty comfortable, you know what I mean? He does not seem like a guy who's part of like a sinking ship right now and they're terrified, you know? He kind of seems like, and he's talked before in different interviews about like, if they have to self-publish System Shock 3, they'll do it. They have income from other sources for other things. They may have compartmentalized some of the finances for the company, so while they have, as far as we know, from what they've told us, they have partnered with Tencent. I don't know to what extent that is. They weren't clear about that, and I don't know if that's still ongoing. Maybe they changed the nature of that deal. The way he has talked about the company in the past is that there probably is some sort of compartmentalization of money, so that they're not just like, oh, well, one project's not doing well, let's just throw our other resources at it, They might, yeah. So it could be that they have a team that's working on concept stuff and maybe testing and systems for this new IP, but for so many people in this documentary to still be attached, listed as attached to that company means that I don't think they're in as much financial trouble as people thought, and I think that they are taking some time to sort of workshop System Shock 3 so that they can make something that is more in tune with what people might want, or take some things back to the drawing board that just weren't working before, because they don't want another Underworld Ascendant on their hands, which I hope is what they're doing. And the reason I bring this up, I'm not trying to get all Tyler McVicker, old school Tyler McVicker and Valve News Network on you with this kind of thing, because that's not my thing. I mean, I still understand that System Shock 3 is, as far as we know right now, a real outside possibility, but look at the sort of perfect storm on the horizon for renewed interest in System Shock 3. You can compare views for the System Shock 3 trailer on YouTube, on Otherside's channel, on IGN and things like that, hovering around 1 million views for each. You can look at the growing popularity of the System Shock remake that's going to be released by Night Dive Studios. In addition to that, Night Dive has said that they are either concurrently working on or will commence finishing work on System Shock 2 Enhanced Edition right after they ship System Shock Remake. By the way, System Shock 2 Enhanced Edition is not the System Shock 2 equivalent of System Shock Remake. It is the System Shock 2 equivalent of the System Shock 1 Enhanced Edition. Likely it's going to probably feature better resolution scaling, probably higher quality textures. They will almost certainly port System Shock 2 from the Dark Engine, which requires several patches and a bunch of other things to get to work properly on modern hardware and operating systems. And they will almost certainly port it into the Kex engine, their in-house engine for dealing with old school software. They'll port it and make sure everything works, and there'll probably be, like I said, some improvements to the visuals, some improvements to things like physics and stuff like that. They'll just basically polish it to a mirror shine. But the release of System Shock 2 Enhanced, right after the release of System Shock 2 Remake, is a great primer, in my opinion, for a release of System Shock 3. You reintroduce you reinvigorate the fan base that already knew System Shock with the remake, and introduce an entire new generation, with console releases and word of mouth, and hopefully they can get some marketing going for it. And then you announce Enhanced Edition. And the other thing that the Enhanced Edition for System Shock 1 did was completely revamp the control set even more, so that it worked even better with mouse look, and that you could turn off the HUD, and that you could do all of these things to make it a much better experience, and can run it at 60 frames a second and all of this stuff. So I would be surprised if there wasn't sort of a control remapping and reworking of a lot of those kind of things in System Shock 2 Enhanced, which again reduces the barrier to entry for people who haven't played it before. Once again, reinvigorating the current fan base, introducing new players. Then you release that, you probably get most of the old fans to check it out. The new fans that just finished Remake are going to say, oh, let's check out the sequel, System Shock 2. And then you are in a very good spot to launch System Shock 3, or at least start talking about it. So I'm actually under the impression, the fact that these guys are still attached to the company, the fact that Warren Spector, again, it's like this. It's like if you murdered somebody, right? Or if you had been witness to a murder, and then you go to get interviewed for a thing, or you go have a conversation with someone, and they start talking about murder, just in general, not even accusing you or anything like that. You're going to be probably visibly uncomfortable, right? So if your current company that you just signed on to, excuse me one sec. If your current company that you just signed on to, and have been working for the past several years, had nothing but financial turmoil, and it's about to close its doors, and it's a fucking nightmare. I don't know that if I were in Warren Spector's position, I don't know if I would be super comfortable talking about again, it's non-accusatory or anything like that, and this isn't like a pointing fingers or anything like that. I'm just saying, I would feel uncomfortable talking about a previous company I worked for and their constant financial trouble. And maybe murder was a little bit extreme. Let's say getting fired from your job. Let's say you got fired from your job, you're a little embarrassed about it, or you're uncomfortable with it. It's not a comfortable situation, and you're out with friends, you haven't told them yet, and they start talking about oh yeah, this dude at work just got fired the other day, and blah blah blah. You're probably going to want to change the subject or not comment on it, because it's subconsciously and consciously drawing attention to something psychologically that you're already dealing with. That is not a good thing. So I just find it interesting that Warren Spector would be totally fine talking about all the financial troubles from Looking Glass, because that's kind of the thing that has been sort of distressing as a fan of Otherside Entertainment, especially someone who wants to see them really get off the ground, is it almost feels like they're running into the same problems that Looking Glass had, where it's every time they start work on a game, funding falls out, there's all these financial issues, they're never quite sure if the company's going to stay open or not. So again, that's a bit of a stretch. I'm not really focusing on that too much, but it is something interesting I noticed. But I think the bigger thing I noticed is that all these people still claim to be attached to the company. The company hasn't really made any official announcements that they're closing anytime soon. They made the Tencent announcement, and unless that deal has fallen through, I would imagine they are working on it. And as of March 2021, they did have a little update. So they were doing some sort of fundraising event for, I think, a charity? Yeah, the Stagecoach Foundation. I'm not sure what that is. But anyways, they had some sort of charity fundraising event that they were part of. And it's like, why even go out and be part of the community if you're going to have to shut your doors soon? You know, we've heard you know, tales from other developers that they had something that was like approaching maybe a beta state that they could start, you know, showing off and stuff like that, or maybe an alpha, approaching like an alpha state that they could start showing off and tinkering with, and maybe release a demo or something. But it wasn't really what they figured fans would want from System Shock 3. So they you know, sacked the entire team and went back to the drawing board. As I've said before too, I speculate that the Tencent involvement is nothing more than just kind of a grunt work, like game design grunt work, where they will do most of the systems development and a lot of the scripting and a lot of the concept art and stuff like that in-house at Otherside, split between Austin, and I think they have an office in Boston as well, with a B. And then they will outsource all the sort of heavy lifting, like actual model design and you know, just putting the levels together in an editor and maybe bug testing and optimization to Tencent, which I'm still not thrilled about, but whatever. So, and I think they might also be waiting. They might see the sort of writing on the wall or the storm on the horizon and say, like, you know, it doesn't really make any sense to talk about System Shock 3 right now. We have nothing to show. We have nothing to talk about. And Night Dive is probably going to launch System Shock Remake within the next 6 to 9 months. And so it's better to ride the momentum from that wave once we're closer to having something to show off, and ideally, if Night Dive's System Shock Remake is very well received, then they can say, hey, you know, now you've played a reimagining of the first installment. Guess what? The third installment's coming out. So that could be what's going on there. And again, this is all pure speculation, but I just found it interesting after watching the documentary. I was just like, why are all these people, like, if the company is really about to completely fold, and is just extant in name only, or as, you know, just filed paperwork for an LLC or whatever only, and there's no one working, why would all these people still list themselves as attached to the company? And again, you know, with Rick Ernst having that sort of interesting, sorry, I just had it up on the screen here. With Rick Ernst having that sort of interesting concept art looking thing as his background, you know, that could be, it's almost certainly not something from a project they're actually working on, or something they're going to use, because why would you leak concept art in a silly way like that? But it seems to me like maybe something like evidence that there is work going on at Otherside outside of just System Shock 3, and a lot of it is maybe sort of like in the concept phase, and stuff like that. But I don't know. It's just, it's weird stuff to be seeing from a company that's supposed to be all but dead. You understand what I'm saying? So I guess to summarize, I'm holding out pretty decent hope that System Shock 3 is actually still in development, and that Otherside Entertainment is not completely defunct. And I think they're just staying quiet, because if you don't have anything to talk about, there's no point in, because you are going to get into, like, well, essentially what I'm doing, ironically, just wild speculation and all this stuff. If you keep trying to poke your head out of the water with, you know, and then all you're going to be doing is I think drawing ire from people who are just like, hey, what's going on with System Shock 3? Hey, what's going on with this? And if you have nothing to tell them, they're just going to get more and more upset. So it's better to just wait until you actually have something. I think in this instance too, I don't know. I'm of two minds about Kickstarter. I think the one nice thing about Kickstarter is that let's say that you're going to need about $3 million, maybe $5 million to make your game, right? And you go to Kickstarter and you ask for $5 million and you get it. Well, then you can make your game, right? And that's a very good thing. I think the problem with a lot of these Kickstarter campaigns, Star Citizen notwithstanding, I don't understand. I don't know that much about the fiasco. I don't know if most of their money has come from Kickstarter. I can't imagine, because what do they burn through, like $20 million at this point? If they got that all from Kickstarter, that's impressive. But also the scope of that project is ridiculous. So, no, I think the problem with Kickstarter for a lot of developers has been, they know they need $3 million or $5 million to make a game, and yet they go to Kickstarter and they ask for $500,000 or $1.5 million, and they get it. And then they still have to go with hat in hand to investors or banks or publishers and try and get the money. And the problem with investors, and I started a small business once and I know this too well, the problem with investors is they are not comfortable signing contracts that lock them into having to stick around. I mean, think about it, from your perspective. If you had spent, most of your life amassing a net worth of like $10 million, and some game developer comes to you and says, hey, can I have $3 million of that to make a game? And it's just like, well, that's 30% of everything I worked for my entire life. I don't know, man. That's a lot of money. And they're like, well, okay, that's cool. And you're just like, all right, well, I guess let's try it. But you're not going to want to sign a contract that says, like, if you walk in on them, in the office and you just see a bunch of cocaine everywhere and corporate ladies of the evening, and you're just like, I don't think you guys are spending this money on game development, that you can't pull your money out at some point and be like, no, I need to protect the rest of whatever I have left of this, so most investors are not going to be comfortable signing contracts like that, saying that they have to stick with that kind of money. Even publishers, which is weird because they're supposed to be shipping the final product, but people are just not comfortable signing these contracts that say they have to commit this money no matter what. And even if they do, I'm sure you can make a case in court, like if you do find, them just doing nothing or just partying when you go in there, you can just be like, look, they're been wasting my investment. I need it back. So the problem is, if you ask Kickstarter for a portion of what you need and then you go to investors, what I've seen time and time again, and especially this happened with Otherside Entertainment on their two previous projects, but I think it's happened to a lot of other Kickstarter projects, is that the private investors outside of the private, as if the Kickstarter is public investing. I mean, I guess it sort of is, but not in the sort of legal sense. But the sort of individual investors, either banks or publishers or individual persons, sometimes get cold feet, or they want to weigh in on the project, or they don't okay certain things, or they say they'll give, $4 million, and then they're like, you know what, I think we're more comfortable with $2 million. Halfway through the project, and you're like, crap, now we don't have that money that we were counting on. And so this happens a lot and that's why I don't understand why developers will go to Kickstarter asking for like a fraction of what they need to finish the game, because it's actually a lot more difficult. If you get some momentum on Kickstarter, it's pretty easy to run a campaign for what you need if you have a pretty fervent fan base. But it's a lot more difficult to actually secure that investment elsewhere, especially on something as risky as game development, So I'm that's what I mean when I'm of two minds about Kickstarter. Like, I think it is beneficial in terms of if you can just tell people what you need. Like, I think, what was it, Tim Schafer? Yeah, for, what was it, Psychonauts 2? He said, we need this much, and it might have been Psychonauts 2, might have been something else. and he got more than what he asked for. I think he ended up needing a little bit more than that, but that's just bad budgeting and oversight issues and stuff like that. That's a different thing. But that was much better because he knew, okay, we have what we need to finish the project, you know. So that is a good thing. It's a very good thing. And people can ask for refunds on their Kickstarters, although I think it's a little more difficult. I think they have to be able to sort of show that you haven't delivered on anything. A lot of Kickstarter money is kind of locked in. And also, you're not asking for like tens of thousands of dollars from every person. You're asking for maybe like 10 or 100. So it's not that huge of a deal. It's not, you know, if you're a fan of something, it's like, yeah, I'll give you $50, you know, to make the thing that's really cool. So that's the positives of Kickstarter. Obviously, the negatives of Kickstarter are if you have any sort of developmental delays or trouble, it's just the bad press and then people wanting refunds and, you know, the constant claims of, you know, you didn't deliver what you promised, you let us down. And of course, the Kickstarters themselves, the backers, become so overly critical because, and that's the other problem too, is everyone has a different sort of interpretation of what they want from the project. Rather than, you know, you see a gameplay trailer and it's the cohesive vision of the team and you're like, oh, that piques my interest. Now you feel some ownership over it and you're like, no, they need to do this, they need to do that, and I gave you $50, so you better listen to me. So it's a public relations minefield to run Kickstarter, and I think Otherside's a little gun shy from Underworld Ascendant, but of course, like I said, their big mistake was not asking for, they thought they had money in the bank, but they didn't with a publisher, and they asked for way less than what they needed to finish the project. So that was supposed to be sort of icing on top kind of money, and it turned into the only funding the project had, which just didn't work. But now you got all these backers who were promised not just that the game would come out and have, you know, this feature list and, you know, these gameplay mechanics and all that stuff with the game, which the game didn't actually have on release, but also you've promised them like actual physical goods, like, oh yeah, you'll get like a game board piece with your name on it or something, or t-shirts, or like a boxed copy, or like a boxed copy signed by the entire staff. And there's, as far as I remember, they're still having trouble fulfilling some of those orders for Kickstarter backers. So I can understand being a little gun shy of Kickstarter. So they have opted to not go for any crowdsourced funding for System Shock 3. I think in the case of just System Shock 3, like I said, I am of two minds about Kickstarter, but I think it's probably for the better since they don't really know what's going on. But at the same time, I mean, they could have avoided all that mess with Starbreeze. I gotta say this too. Other than marketing, I really don't know, because Warren Spector, he's very like anti-self-publishing, because he says it's like a nightmare and it's a lot of stuff to do. But it's like, yeah, you don't have to ship a boxed copy anymore. You don't have to like send the data out on hard drives to disc manufacturers and have the logos printed on the discs and then the data written to the disc. You don't have to, and then like CD cover. You don't have to do that shit anymore, man. You just throw it up on Steam. So other than marketing, I can't understand what would really be a nightmare. Again, I don't know anything about the actual mechanics and logistics of how to do that, but I can't understand what would take so much time and attention away from anything else in the studio. Again, the only thing that would be an issue is marketing. But at that point, just go with a marketing firm, and just okay some of their decisions and just say like, all right, we want this kind of ad coverage for this game. Can you do that for us? But I also feel like a game like System Shock 3 is gonna kind of sell itself. I don't know. I couldn't honestly weigh in on that, but because I think one of the reasons that they wanted to go with Starbreeze was that Starbreeze was gonna publish it for them, which was gonna include some marketing. But it's kind of like, again, when I was starting my business, we were gonna have to go through a distributor for our product. And they were going to be the ones in charge of selling it to new customers. And they were going to be the ones in charge of storage of it. It was a foodstuffs type product. And we were like, if you don't store it right, you're going to fuck it up. And they're like, yeah, don't worry about that. And I was also like, so how are you going to sell this to customers? And they were like, oh, well, you know, we'll just say it's really good. Like, they just don't give a shit, man. They don't give a shit. It's just another thing for them. And I understand the position of a publisher is totally different, but nobody's going to care about your product as much as you do. So if anyone's going to go out there and sell it, it should be you. So I don't understand why you would want to leave the marketing, except if they make, you know, if you need some ideas on how to make a really good ad or where you're going to get the best exposure. But other than that, you should do a lot of the marketing stuff yourself, in my opinion, because again, nobody's going to be as passionate about selling your thing as you are. So, but anyways, I've totally rambled on, but these are just some of my thoughts that have been sort of bubbling over for weeks, maybe even months now, about just what's going on with System Shock 3 and everything like that. And again, you know, the Noclip Thief documentary was great. I highly recommend it. And I will be doing something. I haven't really decided. I'm going to probably put a poll up now that I can do that on my channel to determine if you guys think I should just do a straight up review series on some of these games, and then if I want to later, a separate retrospective, or if they should be rolled into one video. Right now I'm thinking they should be rolled into one video, but it's kind of hard to talk about the history. Like, you know, I like Thief Gold a lot, but I've definitely got a few bones to pick with it. So it'll be kind of interesting to just extol the virtues of this landmark title and how, you know, influential it is, and you know, what a work of genius it is, and then like kind of switch gears and just be like, yeah, but I'm pissed at this level and this shit's kind of annoying and blah blah blah. Like I think that might be better for just a straight up review where I talk more about my experience with the game rather than like the importance of it. And if I was going to do a retrospective, I might just roll all 3 Thief games into it, more of like a historical retrospective, and then do separate reviews on each. But I don't really know yet. I'll put a poll up and see what you guys think. But yeah, check out the Noclip documentary. I thought it was fantastic, and yeah, I will be doing something. But yeah, I'll be doing something similar. And you know, again, I'm not trying to get all Valve News Network on this or anything like that, and just pure speculative, you know, sort of tinfoil hat type of stuff here. But it was when I saw those people, you know, come on, and then they still had the Otherside Entertainment attached to their names. It's the only thing I could think. I was just like, huh, like it just, I wouldn't have made this video if it didn't sort of draw my attention, but it did. And I was like, that's kind of interesting. Why are they still, you know, so everyone who's supposed to be attached still seems attached. And I do think it was a little strange Paul Neurath not being in the video at all. I know Thief was sort of kind of his baby a little bit. Not any more than anyone else's, but it was sort of his baby a little bit. And of course he was head of the company during that time, making a lot of the sort of finalization decisions. So, you know, and he seems pretty up for interviews. I mean, he's been on virtually any kind of, I think I saw him on a channel with like less than 2K subs or something like that. Like he was totally fine going on those kind of channels and stuff. So again, highly suspect that he's not there. It could mean he's super busy, and if he's super busy, it could mean something's going on with System Shock 3. And like I said too, it just seems like as of today, what, August 11th 2021 is not a great time to talk about System Shock 3 for the company, for Otherside Entertainment. But very soon is going to be a pretty good time. Like I said, sometime after the launch of System Shock 1 Remake and System Shock 2 Enhanced, if I were in charge of Otherside, that's when I would start really dropping some major content updates and start get people excited. Again, I'm assuming that System Shock Remake is good. From what I've seen so far, yeah, I've got some gripes and some nitpicks about it, but I mean, it's going to have to be radically different from what they've shown off for me to be disappointed. I'll certainly, if they keep with some of the trends that they've been showing off, I will certainly, like I said, have some gripes. and have some disagreements with certain stylistic changes that they've made, you know, across the board, from voice acting to music to graphics to overall aesthetic. But by and large, it looks like it's going to shape up to be a pretty sweet fucking game and a pretty good remake. So that being the case, if it's well received, that's when I would start talking about System Shock 3 as a company. So anyways, thanks for checking out this video. It's just, you know, I am gonna try and tighten up certain types of content, but this is just my sort of my impressions series, and I think I am gonna do this. My impressions series is gonna start to be this sort of long form, unscripted, almost podcasty sort of just talking about stuff, because, you know, I can get all my thoughts out there. You know, I don't have to waste, because scripting is better for focusing thoughts, but it wastes a lot of time, and I don't have to waste a lot of time editing too. In fact, if I hadn't taken so many sips of coffee and paused for to think about what I'm going to say, this would require basically no editing whatsoever. Yeah, so it's a great way for me to just kind of put stuff out there and keep some content going on the channel without having to spend a lot of time and divert a lot of time and energy. So anyways, thanks for checking it out, guys. Also, let me know what you thought of the Noclip documentary. I thought it was fantastic. I'd like to do some coverage of the game myself soon. And let me know what you think about what's going on with Otherside Entertainment.